You made it. You made it.
I made it.
So I want to go ahead and get started to make sure that we give our speakers enough time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another Child Care Town Hall meeting. I'm Christina Studebaker with the United Way. I'm Community Impact Coordinator, and I'll be helping facilitate this evening's meeting. As most of you know, or all of you know, we've been holding these town hall meetings every other Tuesday since mid-October to increase our community's knowledge and understanding about how our local child care system is operating, and to consider ways that we might improve it with the ultimate goals of having high quality, affordable child care available to all families in Door County who want it, and also to have high quality, well-trained child care providers who get paid a living wage or more than a living wage. And so all of those goals together come to fruition tonight when we're going to be speaking with Cindy Trinkner-Peot and Karen Corekin-DeLaMer from Northern Door Children's Center to talk about how when a child care center is trying to achieve all of these goals, it can be very challenging because they can conflict with one another. And as you work to improve one goal, it puts a lot of pressure and stress and strain on your ability to achieve those other goals. So you all might be familiar with Cindy and Karen, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves more. We do have the chat function. They've asked that questions, they'll answer questions at the end, but if you want to write something in the chat so that you don't forget it, and then we'll refer back to that at the end of the presentation for our discussion time, that's totally fine. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Karen and Cindy. And let me know when you want me to bring up your slides, but I'm not going to call them up until you tell me.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, just for reference, we're probably going to speak for about 15 to 20 minutes. And we'll have a PowerPoint that you'll be able to follow along. So you'll be able to see basically everything we're saying in print as well. And Christina's going to help us with that. So
Yay,
go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, yay, Christina, thank you.
Yes. We would like to learn how to do that sometime, but not tonight.
Yeah, let's hope I do it better than I did last town hall meeting where I didn't show anyone what was on screen.
Okay. Well, I just noticed looking at everyone's name on the screen that you can tell that Karen and I are women of the 70s because we have the longest names in the world and they're all hyphenated. You see that everybody else has like short little name and yeah. Okay, well, tonight we are going to talk about what is the trilemma of early childhood programs, but we're going to start by introducing ourselves. Karen is our writer. She is our public relations person here at Northern Door Children's Center, among other things. So she has done most of the writing for tonight. So I'm going to let her start by introducing me, and then I will introduce her. So we want our first slide, Christina.
Okay, let me bring it up here. Everyone can see this?
Yep. And slide 2, you can move on to.
Excellent. There we go.
Okay, I'm just going to read along with me. Cindy has very impressive credentials, so I want to make sure I say all of them. Cindy has an undergraduate degree in speech pathology and a master's degree in education, and she has been in the field for four decades, which was kind of scary looking at how many years we've been doing this. She's been a classroom teacher, an assistant center director, a college-level early childhood instructor, and a director of early childhood programs in lots of places, many states, including Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Massachusetts, Colorado, and Indiana. She's been the executive director of Northern Door Children's Center since 2000, coming up on 21 years. And this is the thing we're all very proud of. In 2016, she was the winner of the Outstanding Service in Early Childhood Education Award from the Wisconsin Division for Early Childhood and Wisconsin Early Childhood Association in recognition of her leadership in and dedication to quality early education and care for all young children. And we're all pretty proud of that around here.
Well, Karen is especially proud because she nominated me.
Okay.
And it all worked out. All right, now I'm going to introduce Karen, who also has incredible credentials. Karen holds an undergraduate degree in elementary, special, and early childhood education, so 3 separate degrees, and has lifetime teaching licenses in Wisconsin and Texas, which is her home. In her 38-year career, she has taught infant, toddler, preschool, 4K, kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, and adult learners at all levels of development and ability. She has also been a center director, a center owner, an educational consultant, and a published author in early childhood education. She has worked in a variety of educational settings in Texas, Kansas, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin. She has been on staff at Northern Door Children's Center since 2003. All right, that's who we are. So tonight we are going to talk about what is the trilemma of early childhood care and education programs. That's our topic for the evening, and we're going to talk about why it's important. All righty, next slide, Christina. Karen?
Okay, so the 3 legs of the stool, or the 3 sides of the triangle of the trilemma, involve quality, affordability, and compensation. So this trilemma is, really wraps around those 3 goals of early childhood programs. And as Christina said, when you try to meet one of those goals, it causes conflict for the other 2. And so the result is that problem. And all of the people who are here tonight obviously care very deeply about young children, and we're part of the solution. We are really honest about the fact that we don't have any hard and fast answers. We've got ideas and experiences to share, but it is definitely, it's a difficult issue to deal with all 3 of those and get that balance just right.
This trilemma was identified way back in the 1970s. So it's something that we've been working on since that time, and there really has been no real solution. So it's not a quick fix. All right, next slide. Karen, do you want to talk about the first leg of that, which is quality? Quality.
So as you can see by the list, there's quite a lot that we identify is what makes up a quality program. And, as everybody is aware, again, who's in early childhood education, those first 5 years, and specifically the first 3 years, are the most important in any human being's life. So we often say, we've got to do our jobs now and do them really, really well, because it's hard to catch up when children are 5 and 6 and 7. So a small class and group size, which depending on the state that you're in, can change, but we're lucky in Wisconsin, it is some of the smaller ratios in the nation. A staff with higher education and continuing education. All of the research shows the higher the level of education of the staff, the better the quality of the program. That's been documented by quite a bit of research. An enriched classroom environment is very important. Learning opportunities and materials that are developmentally appropriate, interactive, multisensory, and plentiful. Low teacher staff turnover, that's a huge, huge issue that I'm sure everyone is familiar with, but keeping that turnover low. And I know we've been really lucky here that a good portion of our staff have been here for at least a decade or more. Positive teacher-student interactions, it's always what we're looking for when we're in a classroom, is seeing those positive interactions. Good health and safety practices now more than ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, we always had fabulous, sanitation systems, and then along comes COVID, and suddenly you're living at a completely different level. So, and then licensing and accreditation. So there's different levels there, your basic state licensing, working with the Young Star program, or different kinds of accreditation. So those are all things that add to the quality of a program.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Next, we're going to talk about compensation. Of course, the first thing that we think about when we talk about compensation is wages. And Christina already mentioned what is a living wage for teachers and administrators in the field. But in addition to that, there are other things that people count on as part of their compensation package that often early childhood educators cannot count on. So that would be health insurance, paid vacation time, paid sick time, paid holidays, stable work week, and any kind of a retirement plan. One of the things that Karen and I really wanted to add was the stable work week, because it's something that people don't think about for early childhood educators. They may think about it for servers who, if it's not busy at a restaurant, they send you home because there's no work to be had. But that also happens in many early childhood programs. When the ratio drops and children go home, they send home teachers, which means you can't always count on working a 40-hour work week, because you don't know when children are going to go home and your employer is going to ask you to leave. Like most schools, 80% of our budget is people. So if you're going to cut costs, it's with people. And that's something that people don't think about. Okay, next slide, Karen.
The last part of the triangle is affordability in early childhood education. So one of the first things I want to emphasize is that childcare, really good, high quality early care and education has value, and it should be affordable, but not free. And we could talk all night about that, but I'm just going to put that out there, that it is a valuable service, and but it should be affordable. The cost of early care and education should be able to fit into a family's budget. It shouldn't be, you know, a mortgage payment, as high as a mortgage payment. It should be affordable, but there's a lot of issues going into that. A family should be able to have more than one child in childcare and still be able to afford that. A lot of families do what we call patchwork care, where they'll have them, you know, 2 days a week at a childcare center for that socializing and that, you know, the learning piece. But then they also have grandma one day and they've got auntie another day, and mom and dad work different shifts, and they're constantly juggling the children in different directions and different places in order to cover themselves so they can work. And teachers should be able to afford to have their children attend the center where they work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I've had some interesting experience with that. So I think it's important, if you teach a place, your child should be able to attend with you.
All right, so what started out as a triangle is now a tornado. So you can see the issues that affect quality, compensation, and affordability, and how they might be conflicting and competing. So on to the next page. Yeah. We're going to tell some real life stories. Karen and I sat around for a couple of minutes and said, okay, let's just talk about some real stories from our own experience working in the field for a lot of years that just come right to the forefront. So story number one is Karen's story. Karen, you might want to just talk about when you took a leave from us and moved to Texas, and this occurred there. So go ahead, Karen.
So all of my previous experience has always been in not-for-profit childcare and early childhood education. I did take an 18-month leave from here and went to live closer to my brother and his children. I really was missing their growing up, and I don't have my own children, so my brother's children are very important to me. So my partner and I moved out to Texas, and so I obtained a job as a center director at a for-profit center, and Cindy told me, "You're going to hate it." She was right. The world of for-profit is very different than the world of not-for-profit. So here I have some really amazing teachers who I am told to pay minimum wage. So that was $7.25 an hour. And not a single one of my 50 teachers, we had 300 families, 50 teachers, had 14 classrooms, plus the school age program. And not one single one of my teachers could afford to have their children come to our center. It was out of their price range. And I so clearly remember one night, one of my teachers, who was an amazing, amazing teacher, had car trouble. So I took her home. And one of the things we had to do was go by and pick her son up at his child care center. And before we got out of the car, she stopped, she put her hand on my arm and she said, "Miss Karen, you need to understand something. This place where I have my son, it's not like our place. So I'm really embarrassed to take you in there, but I'm going to." And so we walk in and, you know, there's a whole bunch of children in a room with a television, and there's not much to that center, but that's all she could afford. So I found it was a big wake-up call for me, a huge wake-up call. And I did also get to see a couple of places where some of my other teachers had their children, and the quality just wasn't there. It was very, very low quality. So that's what happens when teachers can't afford to have their own children attend a quality center where they may work. That's my personal story.
Okay, story number 2, Karen and I are both going to chime in on, because there are words that strike fear into our hearts. And those words are, Miss Karen, Miss Cindy, can I talk to you in your
Talk to you for a
office?
minute. We've got to talk to you for a minute.
It makes your heart palpitate, because it always means they're quitting, and it always means that you're going to have staff turnover. And
Yep.
so many times in our careers that has happened, and it is because of low compensation. It is because they can't afford to continue to work for you, and it is a real problem. Karen?
Some of my teachers actually left because they could get 25 cents an hour more at the child care center down the street. I was living in Houston, in a suburb of Houston, and that was how dire the straits were, that they would leave a job they really liked for 25 cents more an hour, and I wasn't allowed to meet that, to match that. I just was told to let them go. I interviewed teachers every week. We did interviews whether I needed staff or not, just because I knew within a week someone would quit. So that constant turnover is so hard on the children and on the parents.
And hard on the quality of the program. When there's no consistency with your staff, there is no time to grow a staff. There's no time to educate a staff, to train a staff, to believe in a philosophy together, to have core values. None of that happens because the turnover is constant, and you're spending all of your time just trying to keep up with putting people in classrooms, and it's really terrifying is what it is. Every night before you go to work the next morning, you're terrified that you're going to have some kind of a resignation, or someone's. In Colorado, when I worked for a for-profit center, my center cook left at 11 o'clock in the morning with the noodles on the stove and never came back. I went in to see where lunch was, and he just left and never came back. It was like crazy. But
I had teachers go out on breaks and not come back from their breaks, from their lunch breaks. And I don't want to say for a second that all for-profit centers are not good and all not-for-profits are great. That is not the case at all. Not the case. There are wonderful, wonderful centers and wonderful organizations under both. But that was just my personal experience. So.
Okay, so story number 3, I'm going to talk about, but Karen can speak to it as well, because it's a story that happened here at Northern Door Children's Center. Back in 2009, when there was a downturn in the economy, things were pretty rough for lots of people, including many of the people who would use our services. So we were having a rough time also at the Children's Center. So what happened was, in order to continue to operate and to keep our doors open, we eliminated health care for all of our employees. So at that point, we were all working for pretty low wages, and we also lost our health care. So I would say it probably took at least 10 years before we recouped the dollars. Our wages caught up to what it might have been to pay for that child care, at least 10 years, maybe even more. So what happens is that the employees shoulder the cost of keeping care going. And that's true by taking a lower wage, by not taking health care and other benefits that might be expected in other fields. We don't regret keeping our doors open, and we've managed to improve things drastically since that time, but it is something that doesn't happen a lot of other places. Karen?
It is really terrific now that we do have the Affordable Care Act, at least for the moment, because that has allowed so many people to have health insurance, and we do help our employees with that. But we eliminated, and we all agreed to it. We all agreed we were going to give up our health care because it was so important to keep the doors open. But I couldn't afford health insurance, so I just hoped for the best. And about 6 months later, after struggling with my health for about 6 months, I finally sucked it up and went to the doctor, who said, if you don't have emergency surgery in the next week, you're probably going to die. So I had to go ahead and have the surgery. And there I was with no health insurance and a major surgery and 4 days in the hospital and test diagnostics and all of that. And in the end, I ended up having to declare bankruptcy. And that took me a lot of years to get out from under, because the payments that everybody wanted, as much as the hospital helped me, and they did, the payments that everybody wanted was at least over half of my salary. So we were going to lose our house. And it was just a bad situation to be in. And we're lucky now that we're all able to get healthcare through the Affordable Care Act, but that's what happened here. It was.
And the other piece that Karen didn't mention is, because she was in that kind of financial position, that is what led her to become a center director in Texas, and led her to leave us. So again, it led to turnover of staff because she couldn't afford to stay with us. So it's all sort of a cascade. These are real life stories, just 3 of many that happen every day in our field. Okay, Christina, you gotta have the next slide. This is going to be a real downer. All right, so what now? You can go on to the next slide, Christina. Okay, Karen, you want to read the first one?
Sure. So the first 1/3 of the trilemma would be, how can we solve the issue of affordability? And again, we don't have all the answers, but these are definitely some things that are available and that we would like to talk about. And one of them is assistance for more families, and families who do qualify in terms of their income can get Wisconsin Shares, which is child care assistance. Again, you do have to qualify, and there are a lot of families who make just a little too much, just a hair too much to be able to qualify. But for the families who use it, it is very helpful. Some substantial and meaningful tax credits, employer-sponsored early care and education. So that would be like an on-site child care center. I was the co-owner of one site in New Hampshire, and then we became an on-site provider for a rehabilitation center in New Hampshire when I lived there. And that was really helpful for the employees, because they, you know, the rehab center paid for about 3/4 of their child care. And that was a really nice thing for those families. The other option is to expand 3K, the 3-year-old preschool age, and the 4K, 4-year-old kindergarten, into the public schools. That presents its own set of problems for folks in early childhood education, pros and cons. 4K, public 4K put a lot of centers out of business, because that's where you start to turn a profit, as those older children with this larger groups of children and smaller ratio of child teacher ratios. So that has its good points. That would be great for families, but that would be really tough for facilities like ours and others in this area and all over the country.
So I haven't read it thoroughly, but I do know that President Biden has some proposals that might help in some of these areas, including the substantial and meaningful tax credits. He's talking about for families who make under a certain dollar amount per year, that there would be a substantial tax credit, like $8,000 a year, that you could take to help with childcare. That would be a huge help, and it would be for all families, not families that, all families who are not wealthy, put it that way. I think the limit is quite high, at least in my world. So that would be a huge help for all families. Childcare is a burden for all families, unless you are extremely wealthy or you completely have it paid for through Wisconsin Shares or another source. It's still a burden. So we need to try to address that for every family. And I know that there are also some plans to supplement infant toddler care, the cost of infant toddler care in his plans. So we'll see how that all pans out. It's all high in the sky at this point. Okay, let's go to the next page. The next 1/3 of the trilemma is, how can we solve the compensation issue?
Oh, did I go too far?
Oh, did I not get the right one? No, keep going.
Whoop, so, whoop, whoop.
Going backwards.
There,
Go.
There you go.
Perfect.
You got
Perfect.
it.
I told you I'm not great.
But you have no idea how bad it would be if Karen and I were trying to. Okay, so we're going to talk about compensation. Obviously, better compensation for members of the early childhood education profession is needed. Karen referred to the Affordable Care Act before. Because we do have a way to access that now, what we did here at Northern Door Children's Center is we don't just say to our people, I think you could get health care at the Affordable Care Act. We're not going to do it for you, but I think you might be able to get it there, because most people are not going to do it on their own unless they have the wherewithal and the
Guidance, some guidance.
So what we did a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago now,
3, yep.
is we had a presentation from a gentleman who has an insurance company in Sturgeon Bay, who is our representative. I had no idea that there even was a representative for an area that helps people get on the Affordable Care Act. So he came to our center. We all had laptops. We scrounged up every laptop we could find, put them all in one room. This was before COVID, where we could all be in one room, and walked us through the Affordable Care Act and helped every one of our employees who wanted to be on the Affordable Care Act in that open enrollment period and put them all on. He is then their representative. If they have any trouble, any questions, they go to him, and he takes care of it with the marketplace. Some of our people got care for 16 cents a month. 16 cents. Why were they not getting care? I mean, it's crazy. So we do that now at open enrollment time every year. We don't have a presentation, but because most of our staff are ongoing, but for all new staff, I put them in touch with our representative. They go have separate meetings with him and are able to see what is available. So that's been helpful.
Very.
Government assistance for wages did happen during COVID, and it was wonderful. We got hazard pay for
Awesome.
the CCC grants that were given out during COVID, and it was much appreciated and made a huge difference. Karen, do you want to talk about rewards and teach?
Yes, I'll start with teach, go backwards a little or forward a little bit. One of the requirements for working in our center is that you either have a 4-year college degree in early childhood education, or you go back to school and get one. And the reason we're able to get our staff to go back to school and get one is the Teach Scholarship Program. It stands for Teachers, Education, and Compensation Helps, I remember. And it basically is a scholarship program through the state of Wisconsin, where the state commits a certain amount of percentage of a teacher's education. We as a center provide and commit to a certain amount of it, as well as a raise every time they complete a different part of their education. And so we have teachers in the building at all different stages of going back to school. It basically covers pretty close to 100% of the cost of going to college. And so the teachers work towards what's called a credential, which is a specialty. You can either specialize in infant, toddler, preschool. We have one teacher who's working on a credential in diversity. There's one in for special education. When you've completed that, you're pretty much halfway to your associate's degree. So you get another scholarship to complete your associate's degree, and then another one to complete your bachelor's degree. And it is almost all done online. I think there's a few times you might have to go in person to whatever school you're at. Mostly the associates and below is done through NWTC, and then you can do the rest of it through River Falls or GB. So it basically allows us to have that important piece, which is a highly educated staff. And what's really nice is our teachers are always going to school, so they're always getting the most cutting edge information and sharing with all the rest of us. And a lot of them are going to classes at the same time and helping each other and sharing information. So it's an amazing program, and it is a requirement for us of being employed here.
And any of you who have paid for college education or are paying for a college education for your children know that that is a huge piece of compensation if you can get it. So
yep, it's definitely worth.
Definitely a plus.
Yeah, it's worth sticking around at a place. It helps with turnover too, because it's worth sticking around to finish your education. So most of our teachers, you know, it takes 5-6 years or more because you're working full time and only taking a couple classes at a time. But, you know, it's great because when they're done, then they've got their college degree. The rewards program is based on your place in the Wisconsin registry. It depends on your level, but they do reward. And I think, is there a freeze on it right now, Cindy? I can't remember.
I don't know because I'm not eligible, so
I'm not anymore either. As long as you're making less than, I believe it's $16.50 an hour, you're eligible to receive a chunk of money once or twice a year. And it's just a reward for being in the field and staying in the field. So it's really nice. That's also money that comes to us through the state. And then the other option is for an organization, for example, like a hospital that has an on-site childcare facility, would be the employees of the childcare facility would receive the same wages and benefits that the other employees of the hospital would receive. So that's an option too for teachers to be working in that kind of a setting, or administrators to work in that type of setting as well. So just a few ideas.
Okay, next one. We're going to talk a little bit about quality, the last part of the trilemma. So I think probably most of us are familiar with the Youngstar quality rating system. We do participate in that, and anyone who receives Wisconsin Shares funding for their families does have to participate in that. We kind of have an independent thought process about the Youngstar rating system. It has been very helpful to us. It has given us many opportunities to look at ourselves and decide what direction we want to move, and we have moved in those directions over time. However, we are not committed to getting 5 stars or 4 stars. We are committed to getting 3 stars and then doing our own thing. So we do what we need to do to get 3 stars. We have a program at our center, which is a looping program for infants and toddlers. So what that means is when our infants come to us, they are a cohort of infants that stay with the same teachers for the first 3 years of their lives. They move through 4 different classrooms in those first 3 years. So that means we're changing teachers all the time in classrooms. With the Youngstar program, you have to keep a certain level of teacher. You have to have a certain level of education in each classroom in order to get 4 or 5 stars. We choose to keep those children with their cohort and with their primary caregivers, no matter what that means for education level in that classroom. We think that's more important. It's what we're committed to. It's what we know works. We know it builds brains. So it is a very valuable program, but we don't use it the way most centers use it. And that's by choice. We're kind of independent thinkers.
And
Go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say too, we have been actually doing the looping program for 19 years now. And the reason I can always keep up with that is Cindy's daughter, who's a freshman in college right now. Her whole cohort of little people were the very first group of loopers, and now they're all freshmen in college. So we're pretty proud of that program, and we're not willing to do anything that would jeopardize it in any way, because it has been incredibly successful for us and for our children and our families.
Obviously, recruiting and retaining highly trained staff is very important. Again, when you start talking about turnover, you get people highly trained and just, you know, part of your philosophy and your group, and you lose them, that's really rough. So being able to recruit and retain that highly trained staff is very important. And also we need to have developmentally appropriate, safe, and healthy environments. Okay, Karen, this is your slide. Made this. She's very proud of it.
It was hard to find a picture of a baby bottom that was adorable like that. Not weird. So yeah, so what is the bottom line? What is the bottom line for all of that? Okay, you can move on to the next one now that we've all had a chuckle at that cute baby.
All right, so this is pretty much, we're going to wrap it up here, but what we're going to say is early childhood educators should not have to rely on donations, occasional bonuses, grants for their jobs to be funded properly. So yeah, it was great we got those CCC grants. It's great that we can get rewards money. It's great that we can get occasional bonuses, but that is not how a highly trained and highly appreciated teacher should have to live. Maybe they'll give me a bonus this year. Maybe I'll get a reward. Maybe the government will do a CCC grant. It's not how we want teachers to have to live. Families need to be supported in order to afford a major child care tuition bill. And Karen and I say this all the time. Having children is expensive. No one is saying that it is not. It is expensive and it shouldn't be free. When you make a decision to have a child, you should understand that it's going to cost you a lot of time, energy, and money. But it should be affordable and it should not break your family budget. And Karen, you want to do the last one?
Mm-hmm. For us, it's really that a high quality early childhood education should be the right of every child, regardless of their family's economic situation. I mean, things have changed a lot since Cindy and I came into the field 30, 40 odd years ago, when it was fine for children to stay at home and then just go to kindergarten or first grade. Well, the expectations have changed for what is expected of children moving into the elementary setting. They have to have very strong social emotional skills, pre-academic skills, and children who don't have that opportunity to have at least a little bit of that experience, they miss out. And so we really feel like that every child should have that opportunity if their family chooses it. And it shouldn't be just a luxury for some children, but an experience that all children can have and should have.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. Thanks for having us, and Q&A.
Thank you. I think Alexis had her hand up earlier. Alexis, I'll read this question, but you can definitely follow up. She says, are there any states or communities funding early childhood through a tax levy similar to school districts, moving past the private or nonprofit model? Is there a hybrid model?
None that I'm aware of.
No, not that we've heard of anyway. It's a great idea.
Okay, I was gonna say, is that even something that like you guys as administrators of early childhood centers would support something like that? Moving, sorry for the background, moving to something like that?
I would think that the childcare would have to be public childcare. I can't imagine that it could be a private group and be tax funded, would be my guess.
There'd have to be some association with a school district.
Or another
entity. Yeah.
You look so solemn.
Well, I just want to say this was a great presentation. Very illuminating, and I learned a lot. So a lot to think about. Thank you. Both of you are incredible women. You are.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Rosemary.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, it was very well done, and a lot to think about. Thank you.
So I'll ask, I mean, you guys, one of the benefits of you having been in this field for so long is that you have great perspective. And has the trilemma existed since the beginning, or has our knowledge about brain science and child development changed so that like what we now consider high quality takes more resources, takes higher skilled things? So has it become more intensified as a trilemma over time?
I think, Karen, do you remember when we were at the national conference in Anaheim?
Yes.
And we got the first, I think it was a VHS tape then. It wasn't a DVD even, I don't think, about brain development. And it was the guy the guy that who was the producer director from Hollywood. He did
You know that one.
Laverne and Shirley. Guy, can you remember?
That he did what? I couldn't hear you.
He was the Laverne and Shirley guy. He's the
Gary Marshall?
yeah, Gary Marshall.
That's it. Yep.
Gary Marshall was the presenter, and he helped produce the first video about the importance of brain development 0 to 3. It's a long time ago. It's probably in the 80s. No, had to be in the 90s.
It was 2004 when we were at the conference. We went to Anaheim in 2004.
Well, then it was a different one because it was in the 90s, I think, probably late 90s. And that was big news. That was the first time that brain development 0 to 3 became mainstream information, and that people really valued what was happening with babies' brains 0 to 3. Before that, it was custodial care, and there was the predominant idea, which still is out there. It's not as predominant, but that childcare should be done for free.
Yep.
Women always did it for free, and it should continue to be done for free. I don't understand why we have to pay for it. I don't understand why it has to come out of our family budget. And that was a pretty predominant, you know, early in our careers, that was pretty predominant.
Yep.
That has changed. People do appreciate early childhood education more now, and there's more awareness.
And public education has changed quite a lot too. I mean, I taught kindergarten in the mid to late 80s, and what we were teaching in kindergarten then is now what the expectation is that we'll teach 3 and 4-year-olds, you know, specifically 4-year-olds. And so the expectation of because public education has changed, that has been pushed down to us on the early childhood level. And so what children are expected to know when they go into elementary school has changed. And so that has changed the scope of our work and what we teach children, and how we need to prepare them for the experience ahead. So that's changed quite a lot in the last few years, and that has its positive and negatives, but yeah, it definitely, the perception of what we do has changed quite a lot. I mean, I can remember, this was the attitude again, this was like 89 and 90, when I had, when I was the co-owner of 2 centers in New Hampshire, and one of them was a small, you know, morning program, and one was the on-site center for the rehab center. And we were able to use the pool at the rehab center. So we invite for swimming lessons, and we invited our children from our other center. And I literally had parents who said, well, I don't want my kids in the same water as daycare kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not going to be okay for me. So things have changed. They have changed a lot. People's attitudes have changed. So I'm grateful for that, for sure. There's just a lot more understanding of the importance of early childhood education.
In the area of affordability, you mentioned that shares can be a big help for some families. But we had somebody from the Department of Children and Families talking a bit about the shares program, and talked about how much parents still have to pay out of pocket typically. Do you have some sense for those families that you serve, how much or what percentage of care they're still paying for?
We don't have as much of a sense of that because now they just unload their card. We used to have a real good sense of that. But we have some families who pay almost nothing. And then we have some families who pay half. But we always say to them, because we have dollars from the United Way, scholarship dollars that we use to help families, we typically would help a family who doesn't qualify for Wisconsin Shares, but still is having trouble affording childcare. We would help them with those scholarship dollars. What we'll say to them is, if you think you can apply for Wisconsin Shares, please do that, because they can help you to a greater extent than we can. We usually can only do between 10 and 25% to help them, whereas Wisconsin Shares, I would say for most people, is going to be 50% or more if they qualify. The times when it gets to be less is as they're weaning them off of the program. As their income rises.
Sorry. One of the things we did recognize quite a few years ago is that that 4-year-old experience is so important for children going into kindergarten. And so we made a commitment that any family who cannot afford, well, what we charge for a morning in 4K is very little. But if a family can't afford it, we will scholarship 100% for 2 mornings a week. So every child in the community who needs that 4-year-old kindergarten experience can have it, because it is so critical. So we make sure that's 100% scholarship. And we're grateful because the United Way and local churches really help us with that. So.
And maybe you covered this while I was off, but when 4K became a thing, right? Gibraltar School District and Northern Door Children's Center sat down and had some very lengthy conversations about why 4K was going to stay with the Child Care Center rather than with Gibraltar School. So that is one difference with Northern Door Children's Center. So yes, we may be scholarshiping some of those 4K kids, but it also allows for a small revenue stream as well to help with part of that trilemma. Not a lot of money, but it helps.
Yeah, it does help. Definitely.
Definitely, when we talked about the pros and cons of, you know, how it could help with affordability, 4K does help with affordability for families. But Amy, you can speak to the fact that it has also decimated child care programs throughout the state, and there are child care deserts everywhere.
Yep.
Is Sturgeon Bay the only district in our county that has 4K at the schools?
No, almost every district in the state has it. 98% of the districts in the state of Wisconsin have it.
So the Southern Door and Sebastopol have it?
Southern
Okay.
Door, Sebastopol, and the island does too now, Corey. So why Washington Island preschool closed, they were a 3- and 4-year-old preschool, and the big school, as they call it on the island, their public school decided to do 4K, which would have just destroyed you know, a small preschool with just 3-year-olds. So they closed the preschool completely.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
Amy is being kind when she says that we sat down and had lengthy discussions. It was head to head. It was head to head, and it was newspaper, and it was a real fight. It was not pleasant. I woke up every morning thinking about it and went to bed every night thinking about it, knowing what the consequences would be. That's back in like 2010, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing I hear from the governor, I think, is even expanding to 3K. Like, as the early childhood folks heading that off or trying, not, I mean, that's not, I know you don't want to pit yourselves against the school districts, like that's not the position to be in, but you know, what's the narrative? How are you how can we help with that, I guess?
I think the best defense against that is to continually make known that there are child care deserts, and that the reason there are child care deserts is because of 4K and 3K. And that's the only way to get that message out there. I mean, we go to the 4K conference, the DPI 4K conference every year, and have for as long as they've been having them. We are the only center there, the only people there that do not have community 4K, because there's only like 4 districts in the state, and we're one of them that don't have community 4K. But we meet all of the requirements of public 4K in our program. We make sure we do the parent outreach. We have the right number of hours of instruction. Karen is a early childhood educator, has the correct licensure to work in a public school. We do all of that and make sure that we offer the same quality program as would be offered in a public school. And I feel from their leaders that they understand that child care deserts are a product of 4K, but they also are very proud of 4K because it has really helped with equity and early childhood education for many children who would not have had it in our state. So again, it's a competing idea.
You're muted.
What's up, Jane?
I was waiting to be called on.
Jane.
Carl whispered a question to me a few minutes ago, and then I thought about adding something to it. And his question was, are there people who get degrees in early childhood education? I believe the answer is yes. I think there are programs now. Is that correct? You can get a bachelor's in early childhood. So are there people who get that and come to work in childcare centers?
Yeah.
And my extension to that question is, and my answer to him was probably not a lot because of the income issue. But my extension of that is, if you can answer it, what type of salary or type of salary range do you think would have to be offered to attract bachelors of early childhood education to childcare centers in our county?
Well, we happen to know because Carl is helping us work through a salary and compensation study. Karen is our 4K teacher. You heard me read her bio, right? Highly
Right.
educated.
30 years.
Probably could not find anybody more highly educated to do her job. We know that Gibraltar area schools pays a first-year teacher who comes to them, no experience, right out of college, $42,000 a year. Karen does not make that, not even close to that. And she's been doing this for 35 years, 38 years, sorry, 38 years. So we are making a concerted effort to try to get her to what would be a beginning salary in a public school. And on top of that, even if we get her salary to match that, she has no health benefits for 2 months of the summer.
And I know the center has lost people, and it's not, and I'm happy for them in one way because they've gone to some of our public schools here in the county from our center. So they're getting, experience, they're getting health benefits, they're getting a higher wage, but boy, makes me really sad for our center. And in fact, Cindy, I think we had hired a bachelor's degree person at one point, was ready to start. And the day before she said, I got a job at Gibraltar.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sad,
Yeah.
sad stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say I'm a story. So my name isn't hyphenated. And I'll bet I got my master's degree the same year you two did. A master's in early childhood education.
Woohoo!
Which at the time I was married. So I could take the $11,000 a year job with no benefits.
Right.
Yep.
In a Head Start program in inner city Detroit.
Wow.
Not too many years after that, was divorced, making $11,000 a year, driving 50 miles one way to do that work, delivering newspapers on the weekend, and taking, I won't say childcare, was babysitting jobs at night, just to try to keep my nose above the water. And it was not doable. So there are times when, I mean, it killed me. It killed me to walk away from that profession. And I couldn't do it. I simply couldn't do it.
Yep.
So there are circumstances when you can, and you know the trade-offs and you know them and you walk into them, and it's the most satisfying work you will find. And there are times when, after trying umpteen million ways to Sunday, you just say, damn it, I got to step away. So that was, so let's see, that is darn close to, it's between a 35 to 40 year story. So we've changed centuries since that story has started, and most of the chapters in it are still the same.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's a very sad one.
It is sad. I like your stories better. Not that they weren't hard, but good for you. I admire you.
Well, and one of the things that have kept Cindy and I going, just on a personal note, is we both clean houses on the side. So I can make $30 an hour.
Scrubbing other people's toilets so we can keep our jobs.
But those sweet little baby butts can't get cleaned for that amount.
Yeah.
So do you guys, we have a lot of people here with a lot of experience, and it's another one of these stories where Depending on the perspective that you take or the issue that you look at, there's in some ways been a lot of change, but in other ways, not a lot has changed. And actually, because not a lot has changed, it's getting worse. When you look at paths forward, which might be government support, might be other forms of public investment or partnerships with business communities, or pushing for employer-sponsored childcare, and thinking about door count. I mean, you can comment on state level or national level, because we're definitely in transition at this point. But also, I'm really interested in Door County. Do you see certain paths forward, either paths that you'd like them to be the paths, or the paths that you say, this is not my favorite, but I believe it is the most probable or most promising if we put focus on it?
Well, I have one thought, and certainly I'm not going to say this is my favored path, but this is the one that I've thought about the most. So we know that there is public 4K, and in some places there is public 3K. We know what that has done to the private child care and early childhood education programs. However, we also know from attending the 4K conference for 20 years or however long we've been there, that each school district makes their own rules as far as contracts with community child care centers go. So say I work for Gibraltar, or I'm in Gibraltar School District, and we decide we're going to have public 4K, and we are going to contract with Northern Door Children's Center to do our 4K program. Karen's going to still be the teacher, and children won't have to have an interrupted day. They come to us, they have the program in the morning, and they stay with us for childcare in the afternoon. Perfect, right? But the money does not come to Northern Door Children's Center. The money is government money. So whenever there's government money, it goes to a government entity. So it will go to Gibraltar area schools, who will then make a contract with Northern Door Children's Center. They can decide to give us $5 a month per child or $300 a month per child, depending on what they think they can get a contract for. And we know from speaking to people in community child care centers that do 4K across the state that that varies drastically. And it can be $5 or $300, or maybe a little money to pay the teacher and to pay for the paper towel. There is no consistency, and there is no requirement for what you pay community child care centers. So he who holds the gold has all the power. And when the money comes through the government, it will go to a government agency, and the government agency will decide. I always thought it made sense for DPI to say, if you are going to contract with a community child care center, this is the amount we pay per child across the state. But because schools are governed by individual school boards, that's not how it works. So I see that as a huge stumbling block for 4K and 3K. If it could be equitable that way, that would support community child care centers who have those programs, but that's not how it's administered and not how it works.
Yep.
Infant toddler care, the most expensive care there is. So the ratio is low, they require lots more care, lots more equipment, lots more everything. If you remove those 3K and 4K into public schools, that's going to really do the same thing that 4K did to child care centers. It's going to put lots of child care centers out of business, and there will be no infant and toddler care without some kind of real subsidy. So yep. I think that's the only thing that I can think of, is if they're going to, if the government is going to really work with private entities, then there needs to be some consistency and some guarantee of what's going to happen, so those people can run a budget. And they can sign a new contract with the community child care center every year if they want, and they can say the next year, well, sorry, we don't have enough kids, we're not gonna do it in years, we're gonna bring it in the schoolhouse, which is what Gibraltar said to us when they first came up with their proposal was, no, we're just going to do it in the schoolhouse. We're not going to collaborate with you at all. So it was just going to take all of the children, and that was the end of it. And when we went head to head, we said the least you need to do is collaborate with us and make it a community childcare site. But it's a conundrum, and who holds the money?
And is that, I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying, because my knowledge of 4K is limited. So the government is essentially serving as just a funding agency and not putting any other requirements on the implementation of 4K?
No,
Or
it's the same funding. It's the same funding mechanism as any other child who's in public school. They allocate a certain amount of money to educate this 4K child. Now, they don't have to have as many hours as a full-time kindergarten through 12th grade student. So I forget what is it. I don't know, 0.36 or something, 0.63, I don't know. But anyway, it's less than a full-time student. But whatever that comes out to be in dollars, they will give that to the school district. So if Sturgeon Bay has 100 children enrolled in 4K in all of their programs, and they get, I don't know, $6,000 per child, they're going to take 100 times $6,000 and give it to Sturgeon Bay School District. They then decide if they're going to contract with a community child care center to do 4K or 3K, or if they're going to keep it all in-house. Of course, if they keep it all in-house, they keep all the money. But if they decide that they want to have community child care centers, and that is very much encouraged by DPI, if they decide they want to do that, they cut their own contract with each community child care center. And they could even cut a separate contract with different child care centers and pay them different amounts. They could say, okay, well, this is what we've heard. These are the kind of things we've heard over the years. Okay, we got to keep some of the money for the library. So we have books in the library for 4K kids. We have to keep some of the money for the principal because she has to supervise the 4K coordinator. We have to keep some of the money for the 4K coordinator. So they keep a pot of money, and then they decide how much they're going to give to community child care centers per child. It could be anything. It could be whatever they decide. And whatever's left over just goes into the general education pot of Sturgeon Bay schools. It's about money. It's always about money.
Jane.
So I guess I'm not understanding how they would not pay, let's say they contracted with Northern Door. How would they not pay the teachers? And this would be based maybe on experience or years or whatever their salary thing is for their school. How would they not pay the teachers at the center similarly to the teachers at the school? And therefore not give enough money to do that?
Well, because there's three different models. The model that we would prefer is model 3, which is we would keep our own teacher who is
right.
And then they would give us money, whatever money they wanted to pay her. But she would not be an employee of Gibraltar Area Schools. She remains an employee of Northern Door Children's Center. If we want our 4K teacher to be paid what Gibraltar Area Schools are paid from Gibraltar Area Schools, we have to let them hire a teacher and put it into Karen's classroom and Karen's out.
Model 2. That's the second model.
Model 2.
Oh my.
And model 1 is everything's in the schoolhouse. Public school, public teacher.
But I just want to clarify, we started this discussion as you think this is the most promising path forward. Is that right?
If the pay could be, if the money could be equitably distributed. The money is there. The government is giving us the money. It's how it's distributed that is not regulated in any manner. Every school district, every school board decides how they're going to allocate that money. because all schools are locally run. That's how it is.
And then it becomes a negotiation piece. So, you
And
know,
it can be
Cindy and her board are negotiating with the Gibraltar School Board for using the $6,000 number that Cindy threw out there, $6,000 per child. Yes, we know the school needs some of that, but can we get 5,000 per child? Can we get 4,500 per child? And it turns into that negotiation. And do they say we take the lesser amount so we can run the program and do what we think is best for the kids? Or do we dig our heels in and lose the contract and make the school run it? And maybe that's not as good for the kids. And please make sure I said the word maybe not as good. Not all public school 4K programs are bad programs. We want to get that.
No,
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 And
not
does
at all.
that make maintenance of the system also somewhat, I hate to say this with government, but potentially easier going forward? Because now you're talking about if you need more funding, you can, at the state level, the DPI level, say you need to increase the amount of money you're sending to the schools per kid. And then there's the individual negotiation going on at the local level for the school district and the child care center. But we're talking a number and a number. I mean, negotiations could get ugly at the local level in terms of horse trading and what you do.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've got these multiple systems of shares and qualifications for federal poverty levels and market rate percentages. And it just seems to be getting really convoluted and really complicated. But that's my view. And maybe the people who are in the system understand why it's a good thing and how it operates.
well, if you want to talk convoluted and complicated, there are many districts. We're a small district with very little complication, but there are lots of districts, say in Milwaukee, Madison area, any other area that's got a large population, where they have to try to make Head Start, community childcare, public school, all mesh together. And they could have any combination of those kinds of care all working together in one, you know, a child might be at all three of those in one day. And they have all different funding, pots of funding, and all different requirements. So the centers have to have licensing, schools have to have BPI, Head Start has to have Head Start. And then you're trying to have children in a setting that has to meet all of those, which makes communication and so much more important. And schools have to make the commitment to have that communication and make those relationships grow and make the situation work. And sometimes it's easier to say, this is kind of a pain, and I'm just bringing it in the schoolhouse. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So it's a conundrum.
I'm just going to throw out one thing. We absolutely do not have time to discuss this tonight, but the most conservative estimates and research that I've found in the last few years is that for every dollar invested in early childhood education, high quality early childhood education, the local community gets a return on investment of at least $7 per each dollar invested. So it is certainly something to consider, especially for a small community like ours, to look at local businesses, local organizations, to see how, you know, especially people who depend on us existing for them to be able to run their businesses, because their employees need good quality childcare where they can depend on it and the parents know that we're going to be here and that they can work. So that's also something to consider. Just throwing it out there. That's definitely a discussion for another night.
Yes, we are aware of that research, and it's been successfully seems presented in some communities and more challenging other places, for sure, as I guess lots of things with childcare. But do want to be mindful, we are almost a 7:15.
Well, I said we were going to talk for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. But so we didn't lose internet connection. We had said that we might return a bit to this conversation next week. We have queued up, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the youth apprenticeship program that is sort of re-energized in Door County, and they have some students in early childhood education or childcare, or different things that fit in this box in the youth apprenticeship world. And we invited some of them back to share their experiences with us, but so far only one student is confirmed. And I'm also reaching out to an adult who went back to school for this, and hope that she could then give us another side of that as somebody who had been in another career and wanted to get trained in this. But we probably will have some additional time next week, and so we could circle back around to this a bit. When it's so timely because we're coming up on legislative days for Door and Kewaunee counties, and we're really trying to think about what are the best asks to make in terms of presenting to the legislators. And there's a lot that goes into it in terms of meeting them where they're at, educating them on things, and asking for things that are operative at the state level, but also things that, of course, we want to directly impact in a positive way in Door County. So I'm totally up for continuing this conversation in 2 weeks. I know Cindy and Karen, you guys might not be available, but if you are, we'd love to have you back to revisit the conversation. And it is timely since these things are, the legislative days is coming in April. So I will leave it there. And in the meantime, if anyone has thoughts about these things, email me and/or Amy, and we will keep track of them. We're happy to have calls to discuss things further and come up with ideas. Beyond legislative days, we're also just, I agree with Rosemary, you guys are amazing women, and talking about things that help your center help improve childcare within Door County. I also don't want to lose sight of that conversation thread and that piece that's on our radar screen. We didn't just invite you to come share your experience and then go away. We want to support and improve things. And you work so hard, and so many of the providers sacrifice so much. And I think from what I understand about what's going on at Northern Door, you're being very innovative and progressive in looking at what you can do to make it sort of an employer of choice, and making this a locale of choice for people in the field. And I totally support that, and we want to stay informed about what's going on and help you in what you can, because I really do think that's the future also of the stabilizing the child care in the county. So please keep the lines of communication open. Now I'm rambling, so I'm gonna just bring it to a close. Anyone who needs, what would like to say something really quickly, but then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
Thank you.
Margie, that was perfect.
Thanks very much. It was a
Thank
great
you.
presentation.
Yes,
Really
thank
good.
you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I will be in touch.
Okay.